polarizes you, takes you further away from what's true. You really now need to reassess the world. I would not be able to live with myself if I pushed aside truth to make myself comfortable.
We've covered a lot already. Hopefully, you've been enjoying it and have gained something from the discussion. If you've liked this, make sure to pick up a copy of Andy's book. With no further ado, let's finish things up.
Don't adjust your settings. You are right where you need to be. Pull the curtains. Lock the doors. They can't know. They don't want you knowing. So pull up a chair and prepare. The Conclave is now in session.
Now, do you seem to do we see in the Eastern philosophies, do we see that gravitating more towards the collective and the Western being more towards the understanding of the self?
Egoism is definitely principally a Western malady, but it's very infectious, and the East is now suffering from it. But creating the identity was not an easy thing. In fact, I'm going to propose something for you here. A lot of people talk about these ancient cave drawings.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you are seeing evidence in some cases of the creation of the self. I think if you look at ancient texts, you are looking at people trying to figure out how to make sense of an infinite world and to bring it down to concept. So the creation, like I said, of the identity and ego was an actual project that was engaged in by artists and spiritually aware people at the beginning. Who are we? And if you look at, for instance, the Bible, early and the Israeli Jewish faith, you're going to see a big accent on who are we? Who are we? We are the people of the law. We are the people of Moses. And that is identity forming. That is ego forming. Identity is a very good thing. Hardened egoism, not so good. All right. And so when you take that initial impetus and you supercharge it, okay, you get a lot of the problems that we have right now. Is, here we are at the beginning, we were at a completely supported noble cause, which was creating unified self so that we could live together and do complicated things together. And then we got to the point where our way or the highway, and we'll kill everybody who doesn't agree with us. And where you had an identity that was just trying to manifest and survive, all of a sudden you've got an identity that wants to conquer. And that's the necessary and obvious progression of creating a self, is creating a self that thinks that it needs to be dominant in all ways. Okay, and that's kind of the dance that we always dance.
That's kind of where we've been sitting for a couple thousand years now.
Yes.
Well, and that actually touches into our last two episodes and what we were discussing in that. And the topic was, where did the God of Abraham come from? And we took a historical look at it and the development of the religions. And one thing that you can't get past, and when talking about the God of Abraham, and whatever we would know as God, it really relies heavily on that egoism, because you see it in all three of the major religions that come from it. You see it in Christianity, in Judaism, in Islam. Their egos have gotten so big, all based off of which part of the religion and earthly religion that you subscribe to has caused so many of the world's problems over the last couple thousand years. And it's like, guys, calm the hell down. You all worship the same God.
But again, at the beginning, they had to work really hard to make it work in the first place.
Yep.
So you needed the energy to go at this project, and you needed the strength and whatever to manifest this identity. And when you got it, okay, you need to
Just sitting at that.
moderate it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
not keep at it with that same initial force, because that takes you, again, polarizes you, takes you further away from what's true, and that polarization is going to be the source of your suffering.
Yeah.
And just the way
Yep.
it works. Yeah.
100%.
Or the source of somebody else's suffering.
Oh,
Yeah.
they go together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hand in hand. We're all suffering together. um,
Going from that though, the true love, like let's
this was
get back to like not suffering a little bit.
Yeah, and this was perhaps probably my favorite section of the book, because it does show that, at least that glimmer of hope, that enlightenment that comes along with, and in a couple different aspects. It's that finding of that true love, and the combining of the two, giving you the betterment, and at the very least a little bit of a boost of enlightenment. My question is this, though: so once we have that, let's say, because it happens so often in today's society, the love is no longer enough and the people split. Do we automatically go back down into where it was we came from? Or, like true love for a person, you always carry a little bit with us. Do we not gain back all of the egotism that we had lost? I guess it's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, there is the possibility. I mean, if you don't, again, if you don't have a holistic approach to creating identity, you're going to eventually face de-evolution, because it's not complete enough
Mhm.
to hold everything together. And de-evolution is a real threat. I think part of the problem is that that ego also polarizes love. Um, Basically, we are stuck in love of self, which is not really love at all, but love is a transcendent force. When you fall in love with another person, it changes you. Okay,
Yeah.
your limits that you used to enjoy in your life become permeable, and that's, yeah, they do. That's what love is. And so if and so people are out looking for their mate, their partner, and that's all the further they look, and that's the only as far as they go with love. Sometimes they fall in love with their children when they're born, and they get into that blanket. But real love, again, takes usually some suffering to figure out. It takes its absence to figure out. And one of the things that we're also, I think, doing by making people comfortable with their neurosis is we're making them comfortable with being out of love, to being separated from it. So that's another penalty we have by not putting people in a position where they have to self-reflect, is we also are blocking their understanding of what it is to be loved.
Mhm.
And that's what you and to need and to care for someone enough that they experience love. I mean, most of what I've done in my modern life was, I realized that love was where all the best messages came from. It's where all the best rule books came from, not from this sense of um, despotism, or being harsh, or being strong, which is a lie that we tell ourselves when we're doing bad things. I'm just being tough. All them libs, they're just not tough enough. I'm going to be tough, and so I'm going to go and do all these really just freaking horrible things because I'm tough. And so they're completely. I mean, if you look at those people, they are almost always loveless. They're almost always living in a loveless world. So egoism is a problem on so many levels. I mean, we're just talking about the basis of it.
Yeah.
And these conversations, and this conversation, is where people become aware of that. They become aware. Holy God, I've been empty from this in my entire life, and yes, it's because it's been all about me. And I've never once sacrificed in a way that made me feel better. Okay, love does that.
Yeah.
When you sacrifice in love comes to you, and that's your medication for your suffering. That was Christ's medication for his suffering, was the love that he got from his actions. Okay, now anybody who suffers for the collective, that's what keeps them whole. That's what gives them strength to get through it. If you don't have that and don't know how to open yourself to that, for instance, incarcerations, punishments, social rebuffs are going to be that much more difficult for you. They're going to be that much more destabilizing because you don't have any forces to balance you. Love is the balancing force. And yes, world, you're fucking yourself up with even your ability to give and receive love.
When I love the advice given in the book, and whether it was meant to be as advice or just as an observation, but the advice of not looking for somebody just like you.
Don't look for a checklist.
Find the challenge, not a checklist.
And here's the thing: if you find the checklist, you're never going to be challenged. Okay, they're going to be just like you, and they're going to fit into your egotistic model. Right?
It's just rebuilding that echo chamber with
That's
somebody
right.
else.
It's an echo chamber, exactly. If you want to experience real love, it's going to come from somebody who has some polarity to you. Okay, and that polarity of difference, right? It's a not you thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when and anybody who's ever truly been in love, I guarantee you, whoever's watching will be able to tell you that. Yes, this man, this woman is, or this, if you're, homosexual, this other person is got stuff that I just never thought, would be a part of my life. And now I couldn't live without it.
Which and it makes perfect sense. It's to a degree advice I give all the time without even realizing and never really seeing it from the standpoint of the ego. All these young adults that I work with at my other job at the restaurant always complaining. I'm picking the wrong person. I'm in this cycle of bad relationships, abusive relationships, all this stuff. And it's like, pick somebody completely different. Find somebody that's different from what your type is.
Yes.
Different mentality, different looks, different everything.
You
might just find the right person when you do that.
I know it doesn't have any tattoos, man. I'm sorry, I just can't get into them. Tattoos are athletes, never do it. Just can't get into those people without tattoos. I mean, I just don't want to be near somebody.
And on the plus side, you taste horrible to cannibals, so it's
Get the tattoos.
So we start eating each other. You'll be the last one.
You'll be the last one because you taste weird.
It's eaten.
Let's see. The next bullet point that we had here, it's more of an appreciation. This was one that, Jess, you said you absolutely loved.
Yeah, I just really like the way you described the egotistic juvenile state of human consciousness. And just kind of describing, like we touched on this already, but just that we've gotten to that juvenile state where we put all that effort forward and we've just kind of stagnated there as a whole.
Well, we got the cap on it because, frankly, Maya, if you look up what Maya is the creator, okay, but the goddess of illusion. The what she uses to create is illusion. Okay, and you have to understand that fiction can be divine. Fiction is not automatically, I'm not paying attention to that. Remember, Moby Dick is fiction. Okay, the To Kill a Mockingbird, fiction. Right? These are things that communicate human truths in an important way. So just because something is fiction doesn't mean that we should automatically devalue it. There might be something very, very.
I mean, the Odyssey is fiction. Gilgamesh is fiction.
Yes. Well, to whatever degree, we think.
To an extent, it's historical fiction, we'll say.
Yeah, but I mean, we're finding, for instance, that Troy existed, and things like that. So there's, who the hell knows? But the only thing that matters is there something important in the writing? When people would, I've been doing this lecturing for a long time, and when people come to me and say, "Man, this is just way different from anything I've ever heard before," I said, "Look, ask yourself only this question: is anything I've said useful?" Okay, that's the only thing I want you to, and that is how you gauge it. Did I get something useful from this intellectual exchange, this story, this whatever else? Was there something useful? And if you say yes, then forget about the fact that it's strange and stuff you haven't heard before. Don't put that filter on it
Yeah.
because there's something in it that's useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely to open the closed mind.
Hmm.
So many people nowadays are just so hell bent on keeping their illusion
That's right, and
that they won't even
we've built a
fathom.
culture. We've built a culture that helps them keep their polarity, and that's the collective part of the mistake. Is everybody wants to keep their egoism intact, so we're building a structure that everybody can keep their egoism intact, and we got to fracture out of it. We rites of passage have been criminalized. I mean, just imagine giving your 14-year-old a knife and telling him to go out and kill a bear. Okay, you'd be in jail, before he got to the woods. But yet,
Jaina hunts off.
I mean, but that was a teaching. That was an important teaching, and we can't even do intellectual conflict anymore. Like I said,
Yeah.
we don't do intellectual conflict anymore. How do we educate? How do we create the circumstances? See, because if we don't create the circumstances are going to be created by our own unconscious. Because staying in the juvenile state of consciousness is not good for us. Okay, it's not good for us collectively. And eventually, the unconscious forces will take over and make it happen, like world wars, great persecutions. It's the natural result, okay, of not building transcendent opportunities into a culture. Okay, and every one of you therapists, especially the Jungians, know exactly what the hell this is talking about. Yeah.
So okay, speaking of building and developing, we mentioned earlier the parents create the ego in their children, and that it's an important stage.
Yes.
What is, if there is any, what is the dangers of either underdeveloping or overdeveloping that egoism in your child?
If you underdevelop it, the kid ends up with a fractured sense of self that they can't move forward with. Okay, they become negatively validated, throwing a punch. They throw punches where other people give hugs, simply because that's where they feel validated. So you end up with, first of all, somebody who's going to have a really rough time socially because they're going to go out and do, again, unconsciously what should have been done consciously by the authority around them. Okay, they're going to find a way to transform, and even if it kills them. Okay, these are the risk takers. These are the people who were constantly in trouble, constantly having relationship issues because they've never been developed. They've never developed a self that's functional. Okay, now, but once you get to a self that's functional, you have to say, all right, Junior, all right, daughter, um, uh, everything we told you up until this point, the Santa Claus stuff, it's just a little different. Okay, now you're Santa Claus. Okay, Santa Claus is an energy and you're it. Telling your little brother that there's no Santa Claus is not how you responsibly use this piece of understanding. Okay, Santa Claus represents a force in this world that is important. It's important to us on many levels. And now you have to make sure that energy, under whatever name, continues forward because it's good for us. Okay, it's good for us. So that's the transformation. Mom and dad, though, they get stuck in this. Yeah, I've always told you the Santa story. Yeah, and I'm just using Santa as
Yeah. It's something that everybody
It's
kind of
the
has a
universal
universal
language.
experience
right.
with.
That's why I'm using it. But it happens in a lot of different things. All those things that I protected you from when you were 6. Okay, it's time not to be protected.
It's time
Okay,
to start peeling those back again.
that's right. That's right. It's time to be not protected by that. That you really now need to reassess the world, because that is the very definition of the trauma that the parents experience whenever the teen hits. Okay, because they are a fully formed ego and they know everything, and they are going to act on that, and they're going to show you all your hypocrisy and a million ways in which you're wrong, because they can see it so clearly.
You want to tell them some things before they get that hard-headed.
Exactly, because you made that, mom and dad. I'm telling you
We,
right
we
now.
were about 2 steps away from being in that phase.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
So now, are we looking at kind of like the same, or I would say probably same societal impact, but maybe different look if we overinflate?
All this is unbalanced.
Mhm.
And our problem is we're off balance right now. Okay, we are off balance, and we don't have, and we are intolerant of balancing influences. Like I said, we've got people that call themselves Christian that refuse to listen to the centerpiece of Christ's own teaching.
Yep.
Okay, think about that. The centerpiece, the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, the Beatitudes, the centerpiece of Christ's own teaching. Yeah, I'm a Christian, and I'm a good American Christian, but that stuff is way too liberal for me. I mean, people say that. They actually say those words.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I often tell people, and I catch flack for it here at the shop. I say all the time, I'm like, the message of Christ is great. It's fantastic.
Because people kind of fucked it up.
People. It's the earthly church that fucked it up.
Uh,
But when you look at the core teachings, the core values of the man himself, it's wonderful, and it's something that and because we get a lot of, most of the people who come in, pagan, agnostic, somewhere along the line, and they're usually have some form of religious trauma associated with the whole church and earthly religion kind of aspect to it. So, it's I think part of our duty to remind them that no, don't shun away from all of that, because the teachings themselves are good, and you see those same teachings in a lot of the other religions as well. That's one wonderful thing that I've learned in even just the last 4.5 years of having the menagerie being open. So many religions touch in so many different ways, and
they do. They all agree at a certain intersectional point.
it's mind blowing to me that it can also be such a blast off point for anger and ego and conflict.
Ego will take any authority it can get its hands on, okay, and corrupt it for its own selfish purpose.
Yeah.
And that whether it's me having a relationship with you, or whether it's me having a relationship with my society, putting on that religious mitre, that garb, whatever it is, that's power.
Yeah.
Okay. And now if I'm just the least bit of an egotist, I've got authority to manifest my egoism, a protection. Okay, for me to make pronouncements that are completely unfounded by anything that's truly moral or spiritual or religious, and inflict those on my community. And that's and atheism is the same thing. I've seen people use, I mean, atheism is not a safe place either. Atheism is often used to whip people. I had a guy that frankly he had a lot of trauma. He had PTSD. He was in Afghanistan, killed the man with a shovel that stuck up on him. And I mean, so this guy had a lot of trauma, and he was very, very intelligent, and he very science oriented. And there was a bar that I frequented that he'd be in, and I went in one day, and he just jumped out of his seat and ran at me and said, "Why don't you like science?" And I said, "I don't like science." See, it was that. He literally, I mean, I was over to where he was going to be anyway. We could have had this conversation. Why don't you like science? And I looked him in the eye and I said, because it doesn't have enough information to tell me how to live a good life. And he stepped back a second. And I said, no, science means experimentation, right? You do an experiment, comes out the same. That's what science means, right? Right? Yeah. Well, philosophy, as far as I know, is not science. Okay, you want to quote Socrates, Plato? It's not science. Okay, so don't call that science. That's philosophy. I'll go philosophy with you all day long because there's a lot of important stuff in there. But nobody's, as far as I know, has ever proved philosophy by experiment, right?
Fair. That's fair.
So it's not science, so like I said, anybody can grab anything that offers social power, and that's what it is. Anything that has social power automatically is subject to somebody taking it, using it for egotistic purposes.
So, and you just brought up the big T word, trauma. And I'm actually surprised. I was looking at my notes real quick, and I completely forgot to leave this out of here. It almost seems like in the book, trauma is, I'm trying to word this properly because trauma is bad. However, in the aspect of uh, breaking the egoism, it almost seems like this is a good stepping stone because it gives us a place to break free from and to grow from. Is that
Trauma, yes,
yeah,
trauma is necessary. There's a saying, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. You're not worth a damn until you've suffered some. And I think that that's true. I think you need to see that you're not omniscient, not omnipotent, and you need to understand the practical consequences. And that is always traumatic.
yeah,
No way to do that
yeah.
without inducing something that looks like trauma.
And as a veteran, as somebody with diagnosed major PTSD, it's a good chunk of my VA disability. It was nice to see it put in a way where there's a positive to it, because I think a lot of times we all look at the trauma and like you said, it hurts, it's suffering, it sucks. But now you're done. You're dealing with it. You're going to have it regardless. It's good to see that there is a potential positive to the traumas that we go through and the things that affect life. And at the same time, I think it's a wonderful, my own personal experience. It ties in the real aspect of true love, right? And the enlightenment we get from that, because my PTSD was, I mean, it was horrible for years, and partly my fault. I've never seen a therapist for it. I've never gone into to do the process properly, because I have a lot of unless you've been there, I don't think you can understand what this trauma
Yeah,
is.
my trauma. You can never understand
Exactly. Yeah.
my
Yeah.
trauma.
Which is part of my egoism.
Right.
And it was to a point where like there was times I'd be driving home from work and I would have full out flashbacks, and thankfully never got into any kind of accidents or anything bad happen, because here I am driving down the road and all of a sudden I'm back in Iraq. Since getting with Jess, the symptoms of the PTSD have eased so much. I maybe in the last 15 years, 2 or 3 flashbacks where it used to be a regular part of my life. And even when it has happened, I still retain the consciousness and the understanding that this isn't real.
Yeah, once you've broken out,
Yeah.
it's really tough to put it
Yeah.
back in the package. Yeah.
Exactly. So, it's like I said, it was nice to see something written where somebody can put a positive spin on the traumas we've been through. And then again, the looking back and the correlation with some of the other things in there, which just validates the idea that trauma can have good effects. So
Yes.
it was a really wonderful part to the book. And I'm absolutely, that's why I'm shocked when I was stopped and looked at here for a second. I'm like, where the hell is this? I know. I intended to put it in there.
Yeah, it's and if you think about it, I mean, you go back to World War II, they didn't have all the fancy names for these. They called it shell shock and things, but these are the people who experienced that. My father was one of them, and I attribute a lot of who I am today from him and who he became after his trauma, and it is these people. I've always, one of the people say I'm a veteran, and I usually just quietly ask them, were you ever in combat? And I know, because just because you were a veteran doesn't mean that you understand
Yep.
this stuff.
Yep.
And a lot of people try to take, again, ego tries to take authority from everything. So I was a soldier, but I worked in the motor pool. I never saw action on the front lines. Nobody wants to make those kind of distinctions. But they want the same authority that the combat soldier gets. The combat soldier, especially the one who, in other words, seen combat, been in those traumatic events. For me and my agenda on life, I've never not been able to talk to one of these guys.
Mhm.
I've had them so mad I thought I was going to die. Okay, but every single one of them at some point mellowed out. And at the very least, I was probably one of the only people that they respected, even though they hated me. They respected where I was coming from, and then that's what you have to do to get into real therapy. Real therapy, you have to risk that kind of stuff
Yep.
with people. If you want to be a therapist, you have to risk going to that dark place with them.
Yep. No, and I agree completely and know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to the difference between the combat veteran and the veteran.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell a lot of people and warn a lot of people around, the one that's going to sit there and tell you all these stories about war and what they went through and all this other thing, they're full of shit.
Yeah, they're reenacting somebody else's story.
Yeah. Those of us who have been there and have seen that,
yeah.
We're not going to tell you, some stranger at the bar, the story of our combat.
Yeah, how we killed a man with our bare hands.
Yeah, you have to have a very deep connection with somebody before you tell that story, or you have to have gone through something like that yourself for us to comfortably tell that story. And it always annoys me when you have other people like, well, I did. No, you didn't.
Sit down.
Yeah, but there it is. That's that insidious ego thing.
Yeah.
Any place ego can grab some social power, it does it.
Yeah.
Even when it has to make the shit up.
Yeah.
Okay, it wants to be omniscient and all powerful. So and then you can see that in our own government. Look at our own president.
Oh yeah,
that's exactly what's going on. Where can I get some power today? We're going to put my name, on
the great, the best.
This is an example of what not to do as a leader. And I think that anybody who's been through trauma immediately looks at that and says, "Yeah, no, yeah."
I found sometimes the most, at least on a teaching style, the most effective leaders are the worst ones. You learn the most from, because you really learn what not to do. Now, not to do it.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest, I've been that worst leader for probably a handful of people throughout my life. It takes a while to really grasp that footing, especially in the beginning. I was 20 or 21. I was put in charge of 10 guys in combat zone as an infantry marine. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. My leadership style back then was garbage.
Yeah.
Well, shut up and do it.
Yeah,
because I
for the
told
most
you
part,
to.
yeah.
Because I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
Because this is what I know, so that's what we're gonna do, guys.
Yeah, and I realized that I couldn't say I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah.
which was the closest thing to the truth.
Yep.
I'm gonna make a whole bunch of shit up that's gonna put you guys in dire jeopardy, and a few of you are gonna die, which is the truth of what's really going on. But I'm just making it up, dudes.
Yeah.
And then just imagine getting that from your commanding officer.
Yeah, it's not exactly comforting.
I had our company commander from our first time that we were over in Iraq. When we were back, our platoon threw a kegger, and we invited him and our first sergeant, and everyone was having a really great time. The guy was going through his own existential crisis, and he's like, I failed you guys. I didn't do right. And it was so strange to sit there and look at the guy who was just leading us in that kind of setting, giving him the pep talk of, no, you did what you could. He goes, well, I froze at first. I'm like, sir, we all did.
Every single one of us was shit bricks.
You shook your head and got right back to the job. And it's not until later in life that you sit there and you realize, okay, I was 20. He was maybe 25, 26. I had a handful of guys under me. He had a couple hundred. And it's just like, it's I think it's just funny when you look back on how everything is, and especially when you start putting like age and everything to it, and you realize like, man, everybody gets thrown into it so young. I bet you they're a really great leader now.
Yeah, they almost every single one of them who made it,
Yeah,
who survived,
yeah.
didn't kill themselves or something. They every single one of them usually has something major to contribute.
I'd like to think that I learned from that and grew from it. And as a fine dining executive chef with a brigade under me, I was still an asshole, but I'd like to think I was at least a better leader.
Every young soldier is an asshole at some
Yeah.
deep level.
Oh, 100%.
It's just how it works.
Yep.
And that we've always relied on our assholes to fight our wars. You know, that's again, that's just how it works.
Yep.
It's just the human condition.
And to be honest with you, some of the most egotistical assholes I've ever had the pleasure of knowing in life.
Pleasure of knowing, absolutely.
You know, I will be the first one to point out the shortcomings and the shaking of the heads when it comes to my brother Marines. But man, do I love and respect every single one of them, even the ones I hated to death.
Because of the circumstance.
Yep.
Truth makes something matter. There was a great religious teacher. His name was G. Iger Chief. And one of the things that he would do to his students is he would just stand up and start yelling, "The house is on fire! The house is on fire!" Because it's all of a sudden there's this collective action. This is collective awareness. He's trying to create a collective awareness of something real. When you put people in the presence of something real, there's nothing more real than combat. Nothing.
Yep.
Nothing. And that's one of the attractions. I think that's why some people get addicted to it.
Yeah.
Is because
Yeah.
there is nothing more real. There's no place. I mean, lying is out the window.
Yep.
Okay. There are bullets flying. People are coming this way. People want to kill us. There is no more real a moment in your life than when you're facing a grizzly bear, or you're facing an enemy on a battlefield. And that experience of that sort of truth is transcendent in and of itself.
I've always said it's the simplest form of life I've ever lived.
Yes, it's very, very simple. And
You
very
live or you
honest.
die. You do your job or you don't. Whether you do it well or you do it poorly, that really doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Because luck is as big a part of this as skill.
Yep. So and that's very free, and it's unfortunately something that's very difficult to carry on into the real world and into the rest of life.
Oh yeah,
because life is so damn complicated.
People don't appreciate that sort of truth.
Yeah.
They again, they run away from it. They expect to be protected from those sorts of transcendent truths, things that really drive home that, for instance, that the universe is not under your control.
Yeah.
Right? That is an important part of the revelatory process. It does not belong to you. It's not a possession. Yeah, you can bump the pinball machine every so often, but eventually it's going to go tilt. And that's the type of stuff that you get really just laser immersed in whenever you're in those sorts of very hyper real circumstances. Car accidents, you're in the middle of a car accident, you experience that time stopping or slowing down, as you could see, like you're about to go over the bridge or whatever, off the bridge. Some people don't experience it, I found, but a lot of people do. They experience that timelessness when they're in those traumatic circumstances, because it is just so real that I can't even apply normal concepts to it. Everything fails. My perception of time, my perception of self, just fails at that particular moment in time. And combat gives you opportunities for those sorts of experiences, which are very, very transcendent. And like I said, one of the big sins against our trauma survivors is not realizing the fact that it's giving them important information about life that is not anything that they need to be ashamed of. It is going to be life-changing, and they cannot go back into the box that they had before those life-changing experiences. And trying to put them back in the box is a waste of time. Okay, it is a waste of time, and it's dangerous in a way that it's not dangerous to pull them out the other side. And by pulling them out the other side, I'm talking about enlightened consciousness. Once you've started this path, The only way out is up. Okay, trying to put somebody in the back in the box that they came from is like it's as useless as trying to put a chick back in an eggshell. Okay, after it's hatched, it's an absolutely useless thing to do. You got to start leading them in their own transcendent understanding and study, because they're whether they like it or not, they're a citizen of this higher realm now, and they're not going to be able to leave it.
So building off of that, and we've covered a lot of things in the last 2 hours or so. So what would be your, say, advice for those that are looking? What's the stepping off point? How do they begin this journey? How do we get one step closer to the enlightened we?
One of the things that helped me was, before I really started to hit my big existential problems, is I developed a respect, and I would even call it a love, for truth. And I would not be able to live with myself if I pushed aside truth to make myself comfortable. And I think that was one of the qualities that both damned me and saved me during my process, was a fidelity and an untypical fidelity to truth. And like I said, I do think that there's, you want to call it past life stuff or whatever. I think that there is some of that in getting through this whole process. I think that hitting the process at all is probably a decision that was made by you before you started incarnation. Was like, I want to hit these. I want to get to the transcendent consciousness during this life. I want to do that, and so you get the opportunity. And the way the universe does it is it puts you in positions where you're challenged. It puts you in positions where trauma happens. So that is one thing, a fidelity to truth that goes beyond your own comfort. There's a lot of people that say to me, "Oh, I love the truth," but then when they get to a truth that's uncomfortable, not so much. Not so much.
Yep.
I don't really want to talk about that anymore, because it's about change. Um, ask yourself what's wrong with love. What's wrong with loving this? What's wrong with loving this guy who walked 900 miles from South America to try to become an American citizen? What's wrong with loving him? Why can't I do that? The hard questions. Why why is love need to be exclusive? Why am I doling it out like it's some sort of a currency that I'm giving to people that I want something back from? Which is not love at all. You need to investigate the primary questions of life. You need to have the energy to address it. A lot of people just say, they just, what about them bucks? And they live a lot, they live a perfectly good life that way. I find that's more in the feminine character than it is in the masculine character, but both sides do it. Let's just get along, and somehow or another, self-inquiry is about just getting along. Self-inquiry is something you don't do because you just want to get along. Because again, you do self-inquiry, it might change your behavior. It might change your behavior. It might change your family dynamics, your relationship dynamics. There's a whole domino effect that we at some level know is there. I have never met a woman or even a man in an abusive relationship that didn't know there was something wrong with it. Okay, but they were more comfortable. The reason they were there is they were more comfortable with the demon they knew than the angel they never met. And so people have to get off their nut. They have to say, I am going to watch the news today. Okay, I am going to look at this terror that's going on. This is not just people making shit up to make me miserable. Right? This is people trying to tell me that the house is on fire, and no matter how much I want to stay in this house and not be bothered and not be affected, the damn thing's burning down around me, and I actually have to get up and do something. Whether it's vote or protest or write a letter to the congressman or if it's a relationship, get the hell out of there. Whatever it is, I got to do something today that's going to push me out of my sleep. It's going to push me out of my slumber. This is none of this. This is not happy, joy stuff. This is tough work, but it gets you to a place. For instance, if I, in the Matrix, the one guy said, I want to forget again. I don't believe that for a second. Would never give up what I know about life now for the comfort that I had before I started on the journey where I got the information. Never would want to give it up, no matter how much it would change my life. I don't think it would change it for the better.
That's, yeah. I mean, the truth is difficult. It's
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah, the truth is, it always changes us again because identity requires a certain smallness, and that smallness is always going to be put in jeopardy by the bigness.
Yeah,
and that's just how life works. That's why it makes sense to side with the collective, okay, as opposed to siding with the self.
All right, guys. First of all, Andy, thank you so much for coming in. This has been a wonderful and just absolutely fascinating conversation.
I think so too. I hope people get a chance to see it.
All right, guys. If you get the chance,
Roots of Discord, the metaphysics of human suffering. There's a Roots of Discord group on Facebook.
Where can they find the book?
The book is available only on Barnes and Noble. It's,
Wonderful.
It's 2222.
All right. And you said there's the Roots Discord Facebook. Is there anywhere else on the social medias that the listeners can find you?
That's the main place.
That's the main
I'm going to be doing an audio version of the book very soon, and you'll find that out on the Facebook page.
Okay.
Wonderful. All right. And guys, as always, please do us the absolute favor. Like, subscribe, share, push all those buttons, do everything that every single podcast ever has asked you to do at the end. And if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, reach out to us at The.Conclave.Podcast at gmail.com or the exact same handle for over Facebook or Instagram. Appreciate you guys. You have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day.
God bless.
It's on you now. You have the knowledge. Do with it as you will. Until next time, the conclave has concluded.